Hey guys, Coach Tracy here for Tips and Tricks Thursday. Today I want to talk about hip health. This is an especially important issue for me, having run into hip issues as an athlete and having seen a lot from my athletes. So I want to share with you guys the two biggest things that I've learned over the years as a coach and an athlete that relate to hip health. The first one is properly structuring your warm-ups so that we are stretching out the hip flexors and loosening those muscles around the hips, and then also re-engaging everything before we get into our lifts. The second one is bracing capacity. And by bracing capacity, I'm referring to the tension that you can pull into your low abs specifically, okay? So the low abs is the space between the belly button and the pelvis. When we can pull tremendous amounts of tension into that space and hold it when we land and when we load, the pelvis is stable. Therefore, the glutes can fire evenly and effectively. Without a stable pelvis, the glutes will not be able to fire efficiently. So a lot of athletes, when we see hip shifting, when they're landing or loading and squatting, stem from imbalances in the glutes and imbalances in tightness in the hips, but it all comes back around to that bracing capacity in the low ab that stabilizes the pelvis and allows those glutes to fire evenly and with maximum efficiency. So we're gonna go over my favorite drills for warm up for the hip, and then my favorite drill for increasing that bracing capacity in the low ab and getting those glutes to fire efficiently. So in terms of properly sequencing your warm-up, guys, like I mentioned before, we're going to try and open the hips up before re-engaging them to get under load. So one of my favorite drills for that is a weighted hip shift. I'm gonna come to a half kneeling position. I'm gonna step my foot out till it's roughly at 90 degrees. I'm gonna stay up nice and tall. This is an active stretch, not a passive one. So you're gonna have a lot of muscle engagement while you are getting pulled into position with the weight to assist. All right, so I'm gonna hold on to a relatively heavy kettlebell. This one's about 53 pounds. I'm gonna stay up nice and tall. I'm gonna actively brace through my low ab and squeeze my glutes, and I'm gonna shift out to the side and I'm gonna hold for 3 to 5 seconds. Maintaining that tension in the low ab and squeezing the glutes as hard as I can. I want this knee to peel open to the side, and I'm gonna use that glute to push it out as I open the hips. I'm gonna hold for 3 to 5 seconds, and then I'm gonna shift back, and I'm gonna do 8 per side like that. Okay, so you can come back. So another drill that I like to use to open the hip is a banded distraction. So a lot of you have tight and pinchy hips, tight hip flexors. What happens when the quad and the hip flexor is super tight is it pulls the head of the femur into the front of the socket. So we get all sorts of tightness and pinchiness, we get impingements. A banded distraction helps to pull things back a little bit, so we're trying to create some space in the front of the hip. So I'm gonna take a long band, I'm gonna attach it to something stable, and I'm gonna anchor it up high into the hip crease, so right where the hip flexor meets the hip. I'm going to step out with the opposite leg into a lunge position, actively squeezing this glute to push my hip into extension. I'm gonna get a little rotation, squeeze and hold for a second, and then I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna repeat this about 5 times or so. Again, this band is pulling back into the hip crease while I squeeze this glute, pushing the hip into extension to create that space. The second one that I'm gonna do from here, keeping the band on this side, I'm going to step out at a 45-degree angle with this leg in front. My back knee will rest on the floor, so I'm in a runner's lunge. I'm going to pull this knee across, so I'm internally rotating the hip while the band pulls into the crease. I'm gonna hold for a couple seconds, and then as I squeeze the glute, I'm gonna push the hip open. So I'm providing some pressure here, the band is pulling into the crease, and I'm squeezing this glute actively, holding for a couple seconds. So I'm gonna go across, and I'm gonna push out for about 10 reps. Okay. So once we've done stretching and creating space, we have to re-engage those muscles around the hip flexors, glutes. We have to get them firing and ready for load. So a nice little sequence for this is with a mini band. So you're gonna take a mini band and put it around your ankles. We're gonna start by facing 45 degrees up against an object. I have a 3-part sequence that I'm gonna run through for 5 reps per leg, per movement. Bracing my low ab, I'm gonna go straight back for 5 reps. Then I'm gonna do the other side for 5 reps, straight back. Then I'm gonna go out to the side for 5. Out to the side for 5. The last one I'm gonna do is little circles clockwise and then counterclockwise, maintaining this tension in the low ab. I'm gonna do both legs like that, okay? After that, I'm gonna take the band and I'm gonna put it underneath the center of my I'm going to go into a banded psoas march to get these hip flexors and the low ab bracing and warmed up. So I'm going to pin this nice and tight, minimizing any shift. I'm going to pull up and hold against the band and then come down. Brace, squeeze, and down. I'm going to do a total of 10, trying to hold at the top for 5 each cycle. So those are some of my favorite warm-up and activation drills. Make sure you guys come back next week so we can go over building your bracing capacity for the second part of this hip health series.